opening scene. Picture this. A radiant sunrise peeks over the vast rolling hills of Canaan. The fields are green, the sky painted orange, and the wind gently rustles a lone shepherd's tunic as he walks among his flock. This is the story of Joseph, a man whose journey from a pit of despair to a position of immense power shows us the importance of unwavering faith and God's providence. Pause for dramatic orchestral crescendo. But let's rewind a bit. Our story begins in a household most of us would call complicated. Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, was not just one among his 12 brothers. No, he stood out like a blazing torch in a dark room. Why? Because he was Jacob's favorite. Yup, right there is the first red flag. Jacob didn't hide it either. He made Joseph a special coat of many colors, a garment so beautiful it made his brothers' faces twist with jealousy every time they saw it. The screen shows Joseph wearing the colorful coat, smiling, while his brothers glare at him in the background. This favoritism wasn't even the worst of it. Joseph had dreams, literally. In one dream, he and his brothers were binding sheaves of grain in a field when his sheaf stood upright, while theirs bowed down to it. And then he went ahead and told them about it. Talk about poking the bear. The voice softens for effect. The dreams didn't end there. He had another one where the sun, moon, and 11 stars all bowed to him. You can guess how his brothers felt about that. Furious, they started plotting, not just to knock him down a peg, but to get rid of him entirely. Harsh, right? Let's set the scene. One day, Jacob sends Joseph to check on his brothers, who are out grazing the family's flocks. He obeys immediately, not realizing he's walking straight into a trap. When his brothers see him approaching, they whisper,
"Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him and see what becomes of his dreams."
Cue tense music as Joseph approaches. Thankfully, Reuben, the eldest brother, has a sliver of decency. He convinces them not to kill Joseph, but to throw him into an empty cistern instead, secretly planning to rescue him later. Even so, they strip him of his precious coat and toss him in the pit like discarded trash. Can you imagine the betrayal Joseph must have felt? Forgotten and alone in the darkness, surrounded by the walls of the pit. Just when you think it can't get any worse, the brothers see a caravan of Ishmaelite traders heading to Egypt and decide to sell Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. 20 pieces. That's barely enough to buy a decent pair of sandals. To cover their tracks, they dip his distinctive coat in goat's blood and take it back to their father Jacob, who is devastated, believing Joseph has been torn to pieces by wild animals. Scene fades from Jacob weeping to Joseph bound and being led by the traders. Joseph is sold to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials in Egypt, and here's where his faith shines. Even as a slave in a foreign land, Joseph doesn't let bitterness or despair consume him. Instead, he works diligently, earning Potiphar's trust and rising to the position of overseer in his household. God was with him, and everything Joseph touched prospered. But just as things start looking up, trouble comes knocking again. Potiphar's wife takes a liking to Joseph and tries to seduce him. Joseph, loyal and righteous, refuses her advances. Furious at being rejected, she falsely accuses him of assault, and Joseph is thrown into prison. The screen darkens, emphasizing his confinement. Imagine being falsely accused by someone you tried to avoid, then being thrown into a dungeon for a crime you didn't commit. Yet even in that dark, damp prison, Joseph continued to trust in God. His integrity and faith earned him favor with the prison warden, who put Joseph in charge of the other prisoners. While in prison, Joseph interprets the dreams of two of Pharaoh's servants, a cupbearer and a baker. To the cupbearer, Joseph predicts restoration to his position. To the baker, not so much. 3 days later, both dreams come true, just as Joseph had predicted. Joseph asks the cupbearer to remember him and plead his case to Pharaoh, and yet the cupbearer forgets about him. For 2 more years, Joseph rots in prison. 2 whole years. Music softens, creating a somber atmosphere. But then, everything changes. Pharaoh himself has a pair of disturbing dreams, ones that no one in all of Egypt can interpret. That is until the cupbearer suddenly remembers Joseph. Joseph is hurriedly brought before Pharaoh, and with God's guidance, he explains the dreams. Egypt is about to face 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Joseph advises Pharaoh to appoint a wise man to oversee grain storage during the years of abundance to prepare for the famine. The screen shows Pharaoh, impressed, nodding in agreement. Recognizing Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh places him in charge of the entire operation. Overnight, Joseph goes from forgotten prisoner to the second most powerful man in Egypt. Talk about a glow-up. Pharaoh even gives him fine robes, beautiful jewelry, and a new name. Joseph, now Zaphenath-Paneah, marries Asenath and begins a family, all while managing Egypt's resources. And then, just as Joseph predicted, the famine strikes, not only Egypt, but the surrounding regions as well. Jacob's family in Canaan is hit hard, and the brothers are sent to Egypt to buy grain. They bow before Joseph, just as in his dreams, but they don't recognize their long-lost brother. The voice shifts to a dramatic tone. What would you do in Joseph's position? Would you take revenge? Confront them? Joseph tests their hearts by accusing them of being spies, then demands they bring back their youngest brother, Benjamin. When they return with Benjamin, Joseph frames him for theft to see how his brothers react. But this time, the brothers show a changed heart. Judah, the very one who suggested selling Joseph, offers himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. Scenes of the brothers pleading with Joseph flash on screen. This moment breaks Joseph. He orders everyone else to leave the room and finally reveals his identity. "I am Joseph," he tells his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" His brothers are speechless, their faces pale with shock and fear. But instead of anger, Joseph offers forgiveness. He sees God's hand in all that has happened. "You meant it for evil," he says, "but God meant it for good, to save many lives." Joseph invites his entire family to Egypt, where they reunite in a heartwarming scene of hugs, tears, and reconciliation. He provides for them, saving them from famine and fulfilling God's greater plan. Jacob, overwhelmed with joy, gets to see his beloved son once more before passing away in peace. Closing scene fades to the vast golden fields of Egypt. Joseph's story is more than just a tale of betrayal and triumph. It's a testament to how God can take the worst circumstances and use them for his good purpose. No matter what pit you may find yourself in, remember, faith can carry you through. God's plans are always greater than ours. Screen fades to black with text, "The End."